Rowan's eyes snapped open to darkness punctuated by soft bioluminescent patterns, dancing across an unfamiliar ceiling. His heart hammered against his ribs as fragmented memories surfaced. The colony ship's emergency protocols, the deafening alarms, the desperate scramble to the escape pods. He'd launched alone, systems failing, consciousness slipping away as the pod entered an uncharted system's atmosphere. But he hadn't been alone when he woke. Two figures sat beside his makeshift bed, their silhouettes outlined by the pale blue glow emanating from the walls. The larger one leaned forward, and Rowan found himself staring into eyes that held the depth of galaxies multifaceted, shifting between violet and silver like living opals. Her skin was the color of moonlight on water, adorned with intricate bioluminescent markings that pulsed gently with what he somehow understood was concern. Peace. Human, she said, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in his chest. I am Matriarch Velsara. You fell from the sky in a dying metal seed. We brought you here. Rowan's hand instinctively moved to his side, finding the jagged scar where his suit had breached. It had been treated, wrapped in something that felt organic yet precisely applied. He looked down at himself still dressed in his torn flight suit, but cleaned and mended with silvery threads that seemed to grow from the fabric itself. Where am I? His voice cracked from disuse. The sanctuary world of Velmara, the matriarch answered. And this is my daughter, Jenny. The smaller figure shifted into the light, and Rowan's breath caught. She looked young, perhaps equivalent to a human teenager with the same luminescent skin as her mother, but patterned differently, like constellations mapping a story he couldn't yet read. What struck him most was her silence. Her mouth remained closed, but her eyes spoke volumes: curiosity, wonder, and something that looked almost like longing. She cannot speak, Velsara explained, noting his gaze. A sickness took her voice when she was young, but she communicates in other ways. Jenny raised her hand, fingers moving in graceful patterns. The bioluminescent marks along her arms flared in sequence, creating what Rowan slowly realized was a language of light and gesture combined. She says you were calling out in your sleep, the matriarch translated, calling for someone named Marcus. Your companion? Rowan's throat tightened. My brother. He was on the colony ship when whatever happened. I don't know if he made it. Jenny's patterns shifted, her movements becoming softer, more flowing. Velsara smiled, a gesture that translated surprisingly well across species. She says hope is not lost until the stars themselves go dark. A young one's wisdom, but wisdom nonetheless. Over the following days, Rowan learned the rhythm of life in the Velmaran sanctuary. The species called the Velkar were a matriarchal society of explorers and healers, their civilization built on empathy and the preservation of life. They'd found his pod's distress beacon and retrieved him from the wreckage, though his ship's computer core was too damaged to reveal much about what had happened to the colony vessel. Jenny became his constant companion. Though she couldn't speak, she taught him the Velkar light language, her patience endless as he fumbled through basic patterns. In return, he taught her about human sign language, and slowly they built a bridge between their worlds with nothing but gestures and determination. You humans are remarkable, Velsara observed one evening as Rowan and Jenny sat together, hands and light dancing in conversation. My people have encountered many species, but few adapt as you do. Jenny hasn't smiled this much since before the sickness. Rowan glanced at the young Velkar, who was indeed radiating what he'd learned was the equivalent of laughter. Her patterns bright and quick. They'd been discussing Earth's oceans, something that fascinated her endlessly since Velmara had none. We're good at making do, Rowan said quietly, at finding connection even when everything's broken. That night, alarms shattered the sanctuary's peace. Rowan bolted upright to find Velsara at his chamber entrance, her patterns flashing urgent red. A ship, she said. Your ship, or what remains of it, the colony vessel you spoke of. It's in orbit, damaged, sending distress signals. Rowan's heart soared and plummeted simultaneously. Marcus could be up there, but the ship was dying, and the Velkar, for all their technology, weren't equipped for deep space rescue on that scale. Jenny appeared beside her mother, her patterns frantic, insistent. She grabbed Rowan's hand, pulling him toward the sanctuary's communication center. "What is she?" Rowan began. "She's trying to tell you something," Velsara interrupted, following. "Something she discovered while accessing your pod's partial records." In the center, Jenny manipulated the holographic displays with practiced ease, pulling up fragmented data. Rowan's breath caught as he saw it a backup protocol he'd initiated before launching. An emergency beacon frequency that only colony ships carried. Jenny's patterns slowed, became deliberate. She pointed at him, then at the display, then made a gesture he'd taught her. "You can." "The Velkar may not have deep space vessels," Velsara said, understanding dawning in her expression, "but your pod does have a transmitter. If we amplify it with our systems, broadcast the emergency recall protocol, we could guide the colony ship's automated systems to a stable orbit." Rowan finished, already moving to the controls. "Buy them time for proper rescue." They worked through the night, human ingenuity meeting Velkar technology, with Jenny bridging the gap in understanding between them. Her light patterns guided Rowan through the alien systems, while he explained human engineering principles. When their hybrid solution finally sent the recall signal into space, all three held their breath. The colony ship's engines flared to life on the monitors. Slowly, impossibly, it began maneuvering toward stable orbit. Jenny's entire body erupted in brilliant, joyful patterns. She threw her arms around Rowan, and he hugged her back, tears streaming down his face. "Marcus," he whispered. "Hold on, brother. Help's coming." Velsara placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch warm and reassuring. "The nearest space-capable civilization is 3 cycles away. We've already sent word. Your people will survive, Rowan, because you fell from the sky and taught my daughter that silence is not emptiness, and that being alone is not the same as being lost." Rowan looked at Jenny, at her radiant smile, and at Velsara's ancient, kind eyes. He'd crashed on an alien world, wounded and desperate. He'd woken beside strangers, but somehow, in the space between words and light, between species and stars, he'd found something humanity had always been good at finding. He'd found family, and in the HFY tradition of his species, he'd proven once again that humans didn't just survive the impossible, they made friends with it along the way, and